Let's bring in Kansas GOP Senator Tom Cotton. Arkansas, I should say. He served in Afghanistan, member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, on top of his call with Ghani, it looks like Mark Milley was on that call too. And the military was concerned about perception. In the call, Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, told Ghani the perception in the United States and in Europe and the media sort of thing is a narrative of the Taliban momentum, the narrative of Taliban victory. And we need to collectively demonstrate and try to turn that perception around. The man in camouflage worried about turning the perception around? How about giving him what he wants? Air cover, Senator. That's tragic.
Yeah, Brian, you cite the critical fact here is that reality matters more than perception, especially in matters of war and peace. And the reality is that Joe Biden pulled the rug out from underneath the Afghan army when he withdrew not just American troops, but all Western contractors who were helping do the maintenance and other logistical work, for instance, that kept the Afghan Air Force flying and gave them that advantage over the Taliban.
And the contractors wanted to stay, Senator. The contractors wanted to stay.
Yeah, they did, Brian. It's just one example of the disastrous miscalculations that brought us to where we are now, with hundreds of Americans left behind in Afghanistan because of Joe Biden's feckless execution of his decision to withdraw. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, Joe Biden promised the Taliban would be out by the end of August, and he promised American citizens trapped behind Taliban lines would stay until we got them out. Joe Biden kept his promise to the Taliban. He broke his promise to Americans.
Senator, we're looking at the front cover of the New York Post. You have the pictures of all 13 of the people who died in that suicide attack in Afghanistan, our men and our women that were over there serving. And then you have the President of the United States standing up there saying that evacuations couldn't have been done in a more orderly manner. How could he even say that to these families and to the people who are stranded there?
I just can't imagine, Ansley, how he could assert that this was done in an orderly and secure fashion. 13 brave American troops are now dead because of the chaos at the airport last week. Those families are never going to have their sons or daughters or husbands or wives back. Obviously, with better planning, if he had given the military the resources it needed to keep Bagram Air Base open, right. If he hadn't withdrawn so quickly over the last couple months and kept the troops on the ground necessary to effect an orderly evacuation, we might not have had those Americans killed. This didn't just happen on Joe Biden's watch. It happened as a direct result of Joe Biden's decisions.
Surely. And, you know, last night when he was talking from the Cross Hall, he was bragging that 90% of those who wanted to leave got out. 90%. I don't remember him saying to George Stephanopoulos, hey, if we lose 10%, that's okay. We were talking, Senator, about 45 minutes ago to a young man by the name of Mohsen, whose entire family went on a family vacation to Afghanistan and then couldn't get out. They went to the airport 7 times. They followed every instruction by the government. They're still stranded over there. Listen to him just about 45 minutes ago.
The only thing I want is to see my mom, my dad, my sister, and my grandma safe and sound back in the country that they've been living in for the most of their lives. And it's like they're hardworking U.S. citizens, and they have valid documents. They're U.S. passport holders. So we were just confused on that. My sister being young and my mother being there and my grandmother being very old, it's like it's very hard for my dad to also bring them along to the airport with him, wait in that line, wait in those huge crowds and everything. The firing that was going on in the air, the smoke bombs, everything, like being pushed around. It was crazy. It's a situation that probably should have been handled better, and it definitely could have been handled better with the proper communication.
Right. And, you know, the communication, they followed every instruction from the State Department, and they never got out. So, Senator, for the Americans stuck there, and his family, everybody holds a U.S. passport. For his family and others, now that the military evacuations have ended, what's Plan B?
Steve, that's a very good question, and we've heard several other stories like that as well. President Biden is hiding behind this fig leaf that all Americans who wanted to get out, they were able to get out. That is simply false, as you just heard, as we've heard so much over the last few days. When you have Taliban goons encircling the airport, beating people who are trying to approach the airport, sometimes stealing their paperwork, Or you just have thousands of people in a crowd in a blazing hot sun. Yes, some Americans couldn't make it to that airport, and now they're stranded behind Taliban lines. I'm not sure what the administration's plan B is. You've heard a lot of talk about it, but it would seem to me that President Biden has left America at the mercy of the Taliban and their willingness to allow Americans to get to an airport or cross a land border into another country to get back to the United States. But as it stands, we have hundreds of Americans who are in effect hostages of the Taliban. They may not be behind lock and key, but they are at the whim of the Taliban.
And Senator, I don't think there's one person that lived outside of Kabul that got out, let alone the people in Kabul that got out. So don't tell me. I don't even think that number's accurate, between 100 and 200. Sadly, I think the number's a lot higher. So the President of the United States and all his minions keep talking about the Taliban's goal and their aspiration to be part of the world community, to be accepted, and the world is watching. And after all, 100 countries signed a letter calling for freedom of travel from the Taliban. Let's see how day one went. Let's see the contrition and how they're acting. Can we see the videotape of the Taliban yesterday, and now that the U.S. is gone? It actually shows, as we roll it in, the U.S. caskets being mock U.S. caskets with our American flag draped over it. That seems like a country that's dying to become part of the world community. Oh, wait a second, there's the French. Oh, in the back, there's the British. It seems like they're really anxious to be accepted by the Security Council. Am I correct, Senator? Does this administration think we're delusional?
Yeah, Brian, they're really eager to be welcomed into the salons in New York and Paris and London and Vienna, all across the world. This is just one more example of how Joe Biden has made America less safe than we were just 2 or 3 months ago. I mean, the Taliban is not the Taliban from the pre-9/11 era. They now control all of the country, not just part of the country as they did back then.
With our uniforms.
They have all that. They have all those weapons and equipment that were left behind. And unlike 20 years ago, they have social media that they can use in the same way ISIS did 6 or 7 years ago to inspire and motivate and enthuse Islamic jihadists all around the world who are today celebrating that they drove America out of Afghanistan in such a humiliating fashion.
Yeah, and as we just heard from our White House correspondent, after the president made the statement last night, now they're trying to change the subject. They're moving on. They're hoping that after the 9/11 commemoration here next week, at the end of next week, Senator, that people forget about how chaotic the exit was from Kabul, and they start paying attention to things that affect them, like the pandemic and bread and butter issues and stuff like that, and forget about how this was botched.
Yeah, Steve, that's been the approach of the White House since the beginning of this fiasco a few weeks ago. They treat it like a campaign story that's a headache that will be off the front pages in a couple days, but that's not the case. We're going to live with the reality of the Taliban and the humiliating abandonment of Afghanistan by Joe Biden for years to come. The consequences will continue to reverberate. It's not just a bad political story that you can turn the page on.
Yeah, he has no right to hurt our reputation. You guys won every battle you were engaged in, and he managed to give us a big L.
And we still have Americans over there, all those students from California. Darrell Isis is trying to get those folks home. Thank you so much, Senator, for being on with us, and thank you for your service.
Thank you all.